All right. Well, we are on the 30, so I want to stay on time. Hopefully, everybody can hear me all right. Just to let everybody know, we are recording this. There are a few folks that asked that could not make it if we could record it. So we will be sharing it, Aaron. Thank you for that. I think the recording has started. Also, just one other housekeeping thing. We're going to ask that people stay on mute unless there is a question to be asked. We're going to roll with the open. We want this to be interactive. So we'll roll with the mic if you feel the need to or have a question that you want to ask, feel free to do so. If it gets a little too much, we might tailor that down a little bit. But there's a lot of good content today. So with this, I just want to, we're really excited to kick off the first event of the year for the Chicagoland, Wisconsin chapter. We've got a two-part series that we're going to be doing with Brad Gauthier. He is the CEO and founder of SiteCast. And today he's going to be talking about how ChatGPT and AI is becoming such a big piece to what things are going to look like in the future. And as we know, it's a very talked about event and it is changing so rapidly. So I want to thank John Cunningham from EM Sales for bringing Brad to the table. He's been working with him on a number of things. So with that, I'll let you say a word or two, John, before Brad chimes in. So thanks again for everybody that's joining. And again, at the end, we'll put the date out there. I think we talked about March 21st for the second one. So, John.
Thanks, Zach. My name is John Cunningham from EM Sales, very small rep firm, just my father and I out of the Chicagoland area. I'm a skeptic on things like this from the beginning. I want to know, how is this going to help my business? How's it going to speed up my day or help me find clients or potentials? And so when Brad first brought this up to me, he actually developed my website. Then he said, "Hey, you want me to teach you some stuff about AI?" I said, "I don't know if I really have time for that, or I don't know if I really want to learn it." As he taught me more, I realized everything I'm doing, I can do it a lot faster and then get on to doing something else or actually calling the clients that I'm finding through using a system like this. So today's kind of an introduction, very basic introduction. When I first started using it, I just went on there and I asked it simple questions and it gave me answers, but it wasn't that great. But it was because I didn't know how to use it. So then Brad taught me how to give the AI prompts, teach the AI who I am, and then tell the AI it is me, and then ask it questions. And then it gave me some real answers, and then it gave me answers, and I used my current clients first to ask the questions. So this way I could see if what was coming back was good information. And it was everything that should be coming back. So then I went and used that to find other things, and it actually works really well. And the analogy I always use, I'm sure a few people have heard it a couple hundred times already, is using a hammer versus a nail gun. If you're building a house, you use the nail gun, you're gonna build more houses. So this is the same thing. It's gonna speed up your process and hopefully help you get to clients faster, is the idea. So with that, I'll hand it over to Brad.
Yeah, thanks, John, and thanks, Zach. Yeah, I'm super excited to show this to you because it's really mind blowing. I've been in the software business for over a couple decades at this point, but I've been into AI since about 2016 when I built an app for this venture capital fund out west, and we used IBM Watson. And back in the day, AI was really more of like brute force. It would just run a bunch of calculations and it seemed smart. However, nowadays it's absolutely mind-blowing, and I'm not like over promising at all. Every day I blows my mind even more, and I'm going to show you a few things that just came out even this week. It's every day it seems like new things. And so even with this talk, I actually didn't even start really outlining it until a couple days ago, because the world is changing so quickly that if I had done this last month when we booked this, the talk would have been completely different. So it's pretty exciting. And so in your industry with the different things that you can do with this technology is pretty exciting. And so just to set the stage a little bit, because I've been talking to a ton of folks over the past gosh, what, 8 years now or whatever, about AI. And the main thing that people the emotion that they get when they hear about AI is fear. And it's so common that people are afraid that these robots are going to take their job, or Skynet's going to come, or, that stuff may happen. It's not going to happen anytime soon. But the main thing to think about is that AI isn't going to eliminate jobs per se, as someone using AI is going to eliminate a job of someone not using AI. And it's a really important mindset shift of the power that, like, the superpowers that you get by using AI and these tools for whether it's sales or productivity, marketing, lawyers, accounting. Every aspect of a business is going to get drastically revolutionized over the coming years. I would argue that it already has happened. It just hasn't been adopted yet. But it's absolutely incredible. And so I have a few examples that I want to show you before we hop into ChatGPT. It's super interesting. So first off, I just want to introduce myself a little bit. So I'm Bradley Gauthier. This was a younger, more naive me before life turned my whole head gray. And my 20s and the early part of my 30s, I built a company called Sitecast.com. And Sitecast.com is essentially a platform for building on the web. And we've been into AI and AI websites and automatic instant websites for years now. And we built it out west. But then when I met my wife, who is now my business partner, which is awesome, we wanted to raise a family. So we're now in the Midwest. And I grew up in northern Wisconsin, and I've been building websites in northern Wisconsin and globally now since I was 12. And it's been a really fun journey. And it's really exciting where the world of tech is going, because, like, I'm in northern Wisconsin, but I'm on the cutting edge of technology. Just I'm on 10 acres right now. It's pretty interesting world we live in. So I'm going to show a few things, and I actually want to just make sure that I'm sharing the screen properly, because there's share sound and optimize screen. Okay, all right, let me do this again. All right, so the first off, so before we get into the text, I just want to show some capabilities of AI, especially around generative AI. There's a lot of different AI where, there's AI that plays chess, and there's different things around mapping and all that. But what we're mostly going to be talking about is generative. And so ChatGPT is mostly text, but there's a few different technology that I want to highlight here. So from a sales, everything that we're going to talk about is from a sales perspective. One of the fun things that could be incorporated from a sales perspective is voice. So historically, text to speech sounds incredibly robotic, but let's see. So welcome to the presentation. So I'm going to type that straight away, and this is how quick it can do this.
Welcome to the presentation.
So just it's amazing what can be done these days. So that's the audio. 11 Labs is pretty sweet, but there's a lot of different text to speech. The other area that has made absolute leaps and bounds is in images. So there is all of these images are not real. Obviously, there's not a fire-breathing bunny, a cloud and a cow in a cloud-filled, fantasy land. There's all sorts of stuff. And so I think I saw this morning, there's also the perils of it. Okay, yeah. So this obviously isn't, this is Donald Trump as Harry Potter, I'm assuming, or something similar. So there's a lot of perils ahead where you're going to hear a lot of negative press around, like, deep fakes and just, the erosion of a lot of, different legacy institutions. Like, artists are getting disruptive. You've probably heard about the Taylor Swift stuff, but all of these images, this is not real. All it took was a little bit of text, and this was created. And it's the worst it will ever be. And so as time goes on, these wolves could turn into something that becomes a video. And just a matter of fact, this past week, OpenAI created a new model that does video. So this video of her walking was literally just a prompt of a stylish woman walks down a Tokyo street filled with warm glowing neon, blah, blah, blah. And it created this scene. And I think it's 60 minutes or 60 seconds long. It's pretty crazy. So look at this. This was several giant woolly mammoths approach. This isn't real, obviously. It was created by AI, and this is the worst it's ever going to be. So we're on this like precipice of literally a cliff of just all of these different technologies converging into a radically different world, and it's super exciting. But I totally can get that it would seem scary at the same time. So it's an interesting situation we live in. So with all of that said, so that's kind of it's the multimodal. So there's text and audio, there's images, there's video. But what we're going to talk about is how to boost your revenue using ChatGPT. So the main thing that I've always worked with businesses is that, like, for the most part, we'll work with them to build software, whether it's for their website or automation or a combination of the two. But the whole goal of everything that you do with technology, the whole goal of business in reality is to increase revenue. So as you increase revenue, like, everything else becomes easier or more fun, or it's usually more fun. So the main goal of a business is to improve revenue. So everything that is implemented into a corporation, whether it's technology or human capital or whatever it is, needs to fuel that goal of increasing revenue. And sometimes it's intangible, where it might make customers more happy, or it might just give you more free time to do better things or whatever it is. But for the most part, everything is designed around making more revenue. So we're going to go into ChatGPT, and I just want to explain a few things about how it works. So this down here, I'm assuming you can see this. And so the place that you put text is called a prompt. And so everything that we're going to talk about today is about prompt engineering. It sounds scary, and it kind of sounds a little pompous, but it actually is true, where English is really the new coding language, if you think about it that way, because the better you put in a prompt, the better the output is. And as John alluded to in the intro, the vast majority of people will just put in a simple prompt. They might test out ChatGPT a little bit, and they're like, this is kind of cool. It's like a parlor trick or whatever, but it's not really for me. It's almost everyone that I've talked to that has tried ChatGPT but doesn't actively use it has that same story, that they went in and they just asked a few different questions, and they thought it was cool, but they couldn't really see a use case for their life. And so my goal for this talk is to provide hopefully some sparks that you can use in your day-to-day sales, and hopefully boost your revenue. So with that said, let's type in a simple prompt, and you'll see what comes out of this. So I'm going to type in.
So Brett, let me stop you. So on the bottom line there, I can barely see that. I don't think people can see what you're typing. It's blocked.
Okay. So I'm going to zoom in
here. You can move
here.
it up a little bit.
How about now? Is that better?
I can see it.
Okay. If you can't see it, you might need to zoom out or something. Anybody on the call? I do know it was a little small, so this probably should be good. And if not, if you don't see some of this stuff, just as a reminder, this is being recorded, and you'll be able to see it in full later. So let's do a simple prompt where it's, tell me a joke about manufacturing. All right, so this is something that would be very similar to if you first try ChatGPT, you're going to get something like this. So why did the manufacturing plant start dating? Because it wanted to find its perfect match in assembly. So that's pretty good. But you see how it's a very simple input, and so it's a very simple output. It's a very It's something that my daughter would say as a joke. It's not a very elaborate joke, and it's not tailored. Doesn't have a lot of the pizzazz around a really well-structured joke. And so the concept is if you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. But if you put high quality in, you're going to get high quality out. And so let's switch this and do a different one. So what we're going to do is, instead of being generic, we're going to try to get much more elaborate. So there's different structure around it. So let's just say you want to tell the system what it is, because with these AI systems, and it doesn't need to just be ChatGPT. There's Claude, there's the Gemini from Google, there's open source ones like Llama and Mistral. There's all sorts of different systems like this, but it's all the same. So you want to tell it what it is. So you are a stand-up comic. So you now have told it what it is. And so you want to then set the stage, essentially. So you are a stand-up comic, and you are the keynote speaker at the electronics representative event. Okay, so you don't need to worry about typos. It's super smart. So now you've set the stage, and so now let's say, what is the audience, for instance? So the audience is composed of 30 to 60. Excuse me if I'm generalizing if you're out of these ranges, but I'm just gonna put this in there. 30 to 6-year-old people from the USA. And then, so now the system now knows who it's talking to. So it's going to give a much better understanding. So let's do one more thing. And let's say the focus of this year's event is on AI integration. All right. So now we've gone from tell me a joke about manufacturing to now we've set a few parameters of what it can think about. So you are a stand-up comic, you're the keynote speaker at the Electronics Representative Association event. The audience is composed of 30 to 60 people, 30 to 60-year-old people from the USA. The focus of this year's event is on AI integration. All right, so now you're going to see a much better result. And so here we have, it's an honor where it's funny. That's basically what I was just saying. And AI stole my job, but don't worry. It also forgot its password. So we're back to square one. So you see that it's pretty fascinating how much better of a result with just like one more minute spent in that prompt. And what you'll see on this next screen is you can get even better. So this is pretty fun, but let's just let it, I'll see what the punchline is. So let's not forget about those virtual assistants. Do you think I'm smart? It replied, let's just say you're not the reason I'm calling I'm called artificial intelligence. Burned by a lot of cloud-based services. That's where we're at, folks. So you see how it's a much better result. So with that said, I want to get into the examples, but hopefully that painted the picture of this is essentially like a very basic, not anything exciting, versus just a little bit more effort, you get a much better result. And it's pretty cool how that all works. So before I hop into the example, is there any questions? And if not, I will move over to here. All right, so I worked with John Cunningham, who introduced me. We worked together a couple days ago on this, and I think we created a really good example for you to see what is possible. The main thing to understand with ChatGPT is that it seems like it's a chat, but what it really is it's just a long line of essentially text, And it's a really simple way to think about it, but it's kind of like an auto type. You know, when you're on your phone and you start typing and it has like a few other words that it recommends next and you can click it. That's essentially what these large language models are, is it just predicts the next word based on what's before it. And so understanding that whatever is before it, it's going to predict, you want to make sure that whatever is in this line of text, that it is helpful for the stuff that follows it. And what this big thing of text is called is a context window. And that context window is totally up to you of what you want to make it. Behind the scenes, there is a systems role where it would be thinking of, I'm a helpful assistant. I speak, in this scenario, I speak English. There's a few basic rules behind the scenes that's happening, but it's ultimately up to you to determine what it knows about any given situation. So this example, we're gonna get into, let's say, a manufacturer or someone that wants to bring touchscreens to market comes to you. We're gonna go through that process and we're gonna figure out in this short amount of time, we're gonna figure out exactly how to bring those touchscreens to market for a very specific niche. So what we're gonna do here is just ask a few simple questions. And we're going to start with, you are an expert in, I've already done this just to speed it up. You are an expert in touchscreens. Explore the manufacturing process of a touchscreen that typically goes into a device. Very simple first question, but what you're doing, again, it goes back to setting the stage, just like turning it into a stand-up comic versus just asking it a joke. We're saying that it's an expert in touchscreens, and we want it to learn what is involved with manufacturing devices and touchscreens and the whole process. And it's going to output different things that if one of your niches is touchscreens, this is probably pretty familiar, but it's going to go through all of the different aspects of the touchscreen. And it's funny because a lot of this early stuff that you do, if you're just trying to teach it, you don't really need to read it too much. You don't need to read it word for word. You kind of just skim it a little bit and say, okay, yeah, this seems to be how they do touchscreens. And so once that is there, in this example, we then do great, please. And I put great. The system is really finicky in a way where if you give it positive reinforcement, it's going to give a slightly better result than if you just, command it. It's kind of Skynet-ish. You want to set the stage so you're one of the friends of the robots. So give it a little positive reinforcement if you could. But so great, please generate a list of industries and sectors which need touchscreens for their devices. So now what's happening there is we are getting it to understand what are the, obviously, industries and sectors. So it's now going to use its knowledge to output this. And we have consumer electronics, computing, IT, automotive, healthcare, banking, finance. I love finance, so I'm going to go with, I want to learn about the touchscreens for ATMs and kiosks. So, okay, so then based on this list, yep.
Brad, one second. So when we were going over this, the notes that I wrote down for anybody taking notes, you have basic input output, which is what Brad's gone over. What he's going over right now is chain of thought. So this is a chain of thought, a chain of everything that's going on. Then you have tree of thought, which he's going to go over next. So those are things we should be paying attention to and maybe outline those, Brad. Basic input output, tree of thought, and chain of thought is what helped me understand.
So that's an important term, and the chain of thought is you're bringing it through. If you think of like just links in a chain, every time that you ask it something, it's essentially getting smarter at what you're trying to accomplish. And the better you can kind of guide it in the direction that you want it to be focused on, essentially. So like, we're guiding it into understanding what industries and sectors are available in the the world of touchscreens. So it's that chain of thought is really important. And then once we get down a little bit further, I'll show you the next concept. So okay, so now we have banking and finance. So I want to do some sales in the banking world. Maybe I have a few connections or whatever that may be. Let's expand on that. So all I need to say is expand on banking and finance. And now it has taken everything above, and I literally just typed in expand on banking and finance. And here it's now saying a lot of this stuff is probably gonna, if you're deep into it, like you're 30 years into the industry or something, a lot of this stuff is going to be super obvious, and you'll be like, why do you need to, I need to be reading this? It's not for you, it's for the AI to get on the same page as you. So you're now exploring, okay, we have ATMs, service, POS systems, tablets, all of these things. All right, so from that list, I want to really get into ATMs. So I know that there's a growing demand for ATMs around the world. There's a few different manufacturers, but I'm not really sure what those manufacturers are. And historically, at this juncture, you probably haven't learned anything new if you're in that world. But what you would typically have done is go to Google or LinkedIn, and now you start Googling stuff where it's like, who creates ATMs or what goes into an ATM? And so you're doing this kind of like manual research process. That's essentially a little haphazard because it's just a bunch of links on Google. So what I've done is, so excellent. Now please use the web to generate a list of manufacturers of ATMs. So now it goes out and does research, and now right now, here's all the top manufacturers of ATMs. So all of a sudden, I have a very targeted list of what can I do to get these touchscreens to market in the ATM in the ATM sector. Here's the list. This is an important juncture to also mention that I'll try to simplify this, but I asked it to use the web because when you start to ask very specific questions around like brands or numbers or math or like all these, the stuff that it's kind of questionable if the AI system, ChatGPT, Gemini, or whatever, it's questionable that they know that answer. If they don't know that answer, it's called, they'll basically hallucinate. And it's a term in the AI world where they'll just make up stuff. And you've probably heard that on the news where like, I think like a lawyer would go in and they would ask like, give me some case law on this topic, and it'll just make up case law. And this one lawyer got in trouble for using that, and they didn't verify. So you always want to trust but verify. And the addition of asking it to use the web whenever you know that it might make up stuff, because it's a very convincing liar essentially. So you want to when there is specifics, either use the web or you do the research or something. It's not perfect just yet. So I just want to definitely make sure that everyone is aware that like if I didn't use the web, maybe one of these companies actually doesn't even exist. It's getting pretty good, but you just want to be aware of that. It's super, super important. But I can trust this for the most part because it did use the web, and what happens here is it gives citations. So here it found a page on top ATM manufacturers, and then top ATM companies. So it had 3 references essentially, and you could click those and explore it. But for the most part, I'm going to believe this because I know a little bit about this industry at this point in a way where this would be it seems like the leader. And so we're going to dive into now that we've uncovered the manufacturers for ATMs that would need touchscreens, let's dive into getting in front of this company.
So Brett,
So they're the leader.
just 1 second. So guys, how this has been helping me, running a rep firm is you've all seen the commercials maybe for like kayak.com where they say, search one and done, where it goes and searches a bunch of websites for you and brings you back all the best lists for your vacations and flights. That's what this is kind of doing when I'm looking for targets and I'm looking for accounts that I don't currently have. It's going to list the accounts that I do have. For example, it was, 20, 30 years ago, but my dad sold the keypads for Diebold, and you see Diebold on every single ATM. So it automatically found one of the customers that we've used in real world, and we can sell touchscreens to them and a few other things too. And then there's a whole list of companies that I've never heard of. Whereas if I'm doing this manually, like Brad said, I'm going to go and I'm going to find these probably, but I'm going to find them one by one. And it's going to take me maybe 2-3 hours. And we're how many minutes into the call, and he's got the list already. And he did it after explaining everything. So he could have found this in 10 seconds. So it's just, you're finding things a lot faster. You might be finding the same things that you already find, but you're doing it just a lot quicker.
That's a really good point, John. And so that was really helpful, because what I found is I use this for my industry of like software development and sales and web development and all that kind of stuff. And like when I'll do this, all of this stuff up here, I don't even, admittedly, I don't even read it anymore, because as long as I'm shaping that chain of thought, all I'm trying to do is get to this point. But what I've done is trained this context window in a way where now it has like a really, really good understanding of manufacturing ATMs in relation to touchscreens. So it's pretty exciting, because this would have taken maybe 2 minutes to get to, where how long would that take traditionally? And the thing is, though, is that even if you did get this list, the old way, the old-fashioned way, that's where it stops. Okay, now what do you do next? And so here is, all right, we have this one. So then I said, use the web to discover the procurement processor of the first manufacturer on the list. So it knows that it's this list, and here's that first manufacturer. It knows what's above it. And so I'm going to just ask it that. And then it goes through, it does a little bit of research, and it has some pretty good in-depth information. And so this is probably where I'm going to, or I'll just cruise through this because we have a lot more to get through. So this is just some more information that could be put into your belt that you can use in the sales process. So now you have their history. You could ask questions about it. You could dive deeper into any of these avenues. But what I asked it was develop a sales strategy to get their touchscreens from me. And now it's based on everything above. It now is developing a sales strategy where it, for the old timers, you probably don't want a new sales strategy or whatever, but it never hurts to kind of get an outside perspective. And that's actually a good side note, is that when you use like Microsoft going forward, they're calling their AI, which is powered by the same system that ChatGPT is, they're calling it Copilot. And it's a really great way of thinking about this, where it really is like a co-pilot or a coworker, or just like an additional person on your staff that has unlimited knowledge. So just think about it as just like this like assistant or a co-pilot. And what it has here is it created a strategy. And I'll just fast forward through that. And one of the strategies was, I love getting creative with different systems. So like if you're a first-time touchscreen seller and you've never worked with this company, you probably have to get creative of how you can get your foot in the door. And so it does mention negotiate flexible terms. So here's a pilot program that it mentions. And they're like, oh, that's a great idea. And so now let's expand on that pilot program. And all of a sudden it's explaining to you how to do a pilot program. And I'm going to skip that. And so let's then say, create an executive summary of this program to present to them. So now you have an executive summary that you could then copy and paste this and put it into a PDF. And now you have a really good executive summary to present to the decision makers at that organization. And then here's the final one that I put in. So if you're trying to then wrap your brain around it of explaining it simply, summarize this in a simple overview. And now it's summarizing the pilot program that you can present that could get your foot in the door of the largest ATM manufacturer. So it's really fascinating how this works. And I know I went through this quick. Again, this is being recorded. So if you want to like pause this and read some of this stuff, just check out the recording. But for the most part, the thing to understand is, in order to get like this pilot program summary, there's no way that you could have just went in and on the first prompt, just type in, give me a pilot program for selling ATM, touchscreens to ATM main. Like, it just wouldn't work that way, where this is so highly focused based on research and all of the stuff above it. And you can keep going where, let's say, I'll do one live one here, and then we're going to switch to with a ton of other things. So, all right, so I'm going to tell it, and in the context window, you can have it do context switching. So now let's say you are the executive team at, it's going to be quicker to do that, at provide a SWOT analysis. And while this loads, I'm going to explain analysis of this opportunity. So what we're going to do is the thing to think about is, when on any given day, we only have a couple hours of really good brain power. If you think about it, the other many hours of the day, we're getting coffee, we're hanging out with our family, we're just doing busy work or whatever it is. We really only have a little bit of time to use our brain power, and then we just run out of it and we need to sleep again. And so the concept of cognitive offloading, of being able to take what's in our brain and have someone else, something else do that instead, is it saves your brain power to do better things. And imagine if you and your team were trying to break into the ATM touchscreen industry, and you had like a full day retreat, and at the end of that retreat, you've come up with this SWOT analysis, for instance. You just spent all day in a very expensive meeting. If there's, let's say, 4 people in the meeting, how many per hour times, let's say 5 hours, you have lunch, you have all these different expenses, versus after everything that we've just done, we now have a full SWOT analysis of what to consider when trying to sell these touchscreens and this pilot program to this organization or any organization. So it's pretty amazing to think about how much brain power you can save, and you can use that for better things throughout your day. So that's the example.
Brad,
Yep.
I think there's a couple questions. I think one of them had to do with trust. How much do you trust this information? And then I think there were a couple about how do we export this once you go through all this effort? So I don't know, maybe a couple ideas there.
Okay, yeah. So the export, that's pretty simple. So in this, that's actually a good point of kind of taking a step back. What I'm doing here is, I'm not teaching you ChatGPT per se. I'm teaching you how to interact with these large language models. And so whether you're using Google or Claude or all of those other ones, that Llama, you're running it locally, whatever AI you're interacting with, they all have these similar concepts of prompts and chain of thought and all of this, where every tool is going to be unique. But what I'm trying to do is teach you how to fish instead of give you a fish. So yes, I'm using ChatGPT, but it could be with anything. However, specifically with ChatGPT, there's a little copy button. So long story short, you can just copy any one of these responses just by, you could either highlight it and hit copy, or you could just hit copy. You can also regenerate. And then one other thing that is, I'm not sure if it's unique to ChatGPT, but John had alluded to it a little bit ago, is tree of thought. So let's say you've gone down the chain of thought and you're starting to hit a dead end. You're like, this really isn't what I'm like interested in. You can go back up. If you think of like a tree and you have branches, you're going down like a branch and the branch keeps getting smaller. And ideally you're getting to the end of the branch where it's like a panacea of information. But let's say it's not. And we go back up, and after we do this SWOT analysis, we're like, it's just, I don't think this pilot program is going to be that good. What you can then do is go back up to any point in there, just like a tree, you're kind of going back down the branch and you're creating a new branch. So let's go to where we talked about the pilot program. And let's say we want to do, instead of a pilot program, we want to explore flexible pricing. So now we can then go and expand on the flexible pricing. And I can hit save. And it's going to now, I don't think that it's going to know that other branch yet. It'll quickly get to that point, but I'm pretty sure that it's not going to have knowledge of the pilot program because we kind of got rid of it. It's like in a different branch, if you think about it. It may have that, it may not. I would think that in the coming months it will start having that, but either way. So now we have a new branch that we can go down, and this is going to be incredibly powerful to when you're trying to get to that end goal. So that's the other concept here that I wanted to explore. So the other question was, did I answer the questions?
I believe so.
The trust, I know that I had mentioned it a little earlier, that anytime that there's like a specific like brand or a company or a name or a number, anything that is specific, you'd want to at least validate it where you can copy and paste it into Google, or you can maybe ask it to clarify, but use the web to clarify it, whatever it may be. Trust but verify, essentially. So all right, so now we're going to switch over to
Brad, we had 1 second. We had two other questions. One question about if you're using like an Excel and you want ChatGPT to help you sort through that and go through some of those things. I know we've talked about that before. Can you go over how we could do that real quick? And then also somebody had a question about the naming. They said they see that your name for the ChatGPT is ERA sales amplifier. Does that have anything to do with your results? Does that affect anything, or is that just a name?
Two great questions. One, I'm going to get into next in my next example. And two, yes, actually. So what I'm actually doing is I trained a GPT, and this is advanced. We can talk about it on the next presentation. But essentially what I did was I trained a GPT to understand contract manufacturing representatives, the whole industry, and I trained it so it's a little bit smarter. The cool thing is if you have a pro account at ChatGPT, you can access this too. So that's, here, I'm going to put in, so I'm just going to type it here. So hopefully you can see it. Sitecast.com. I can get to this later, but just so you know, I can invite you to this, and it's way smarter than the normal ChatGPT, but the concepts that I showed you are the same. But just email me at this email, brad@sitecast.com, and I'll give you a link to this, and it's just brad@sitecast.com. It's very, very simple.
Would you be okay with Aaron sending that out to the people that signed up here?
Yeah, that's well, I have to invite individually, so yeah, just send my email out. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I was going to say if you had the link, we could send it out to the people.
Yeah, just shoot me an email and I'll invite you to that. So
okay.
All right. The other question was about spreadsheets. What's really cool about ChatGPT and all these systems now is they're becoming multimodal, meaning that they can do more than just text. And I found a brochure of the one of the ATMs that they create. And when you see these PDFs, they're cool. They're very designed well. They're really helpful to quickly digest it, but it's kind of tricky to to just understand what's going on, because the information is all spread out. There's a lot of images that maybe you don't care about. Like, this looks nice, but I just want to know those words or whatever it is. What's cool is that, let's do here. I'll do a new one so you just see how easy this is. So I'm going to go in and let's see. Oh, my downloads are, let's see, downloads. Finder. Okay. The Zoom thing isn't, the Zoom thing is always so annoying. It like gets in the way. Oh, there we go. Here we go. Oh, this one. All right. So I'm going to upload this PDF and you'll see how quick this is. So, all right. Now, here we go. All right, I'm uploading this PDF, and let's say it could be, I'm pretty sure it could even be in like Mandarin, it could be in German, it could be in whatever language. You could upload pretty much any document and you can ask questions about it. So now we have that ATM, and we can say, summarize this PDF. And this is a very generic question, but it will highlight what is possible here. And this, by default, it's using ChatGPT. I can show you in the next talk of how to bring in the custom GPTs and all that kind of stuff. But so now it's summarized in this PDF, which is pretty incredible. It took all of the content of it, and you now can ask questions about it. So let's say you now know these models. Let's list the models they make. And it's gonna, instead of having to go through their design, you just want a list of the models. So let's say on your sales call, you have a good understanding of what is available. You can just go in and say, you can give these examples. So it's pretty cool what you can do with the multimodal. I would like to transition. We have 13 more minutes for using AI in general for sales. What we've talked about now is, up to now, is been the ChatGPT and some of the different technology. Just to zoom back out, so I'm going to stop sharing just so I can talk specifically to you. So the thing that is possible going forward is the ability to quickly become an expert in your given niche, whatever that is super, super important. And it's going to be what separates you. And that's the power of AI. So not only are you going into sales conversations with a really good strategy that was generated by ChatGPT, but you're also you're able to use this technology as a superpower. And if you think about it that way, what are some of the ways that you could use this technology for good? And I'm going to quickly show you. I'll get back to sharing my screen here. So this is just a demo that I created in a way where you can use AI to quickly create things to email. So let's say you're in a sales conversation and you're talking to the prospect about the touch screens for ATMs. You could actually go in, and we did all that training. Let's go in and add, maybe they want more information or what you're all about. So let's do, in full disclosure, this is our company. We've been building this for about 10 years, touchscreens for, so I'm going to add a product to go on the web. So touchscreens for ATM, I'm going to hit get started, and it's going to go through a quick little process. And the reason I'm showing you this, other than it's my baby, is that it's going to highlight the things that are what we had talked about in ChatGPT. So you always want to have a goal with anything that you're doing in terms of generating content or information. You always want to have a goal. So our system will automatically know that it's fine-tuned on sales and conversion rate optimization. But like, so for this, it's drive sales of ATM touchscreens. And then you always want to have a target audience. So whether you're talking to ChatGPT or Gemini or any of these, you want it to consider who is the audience. And so this would be BTP clients in I would probably add in manufacturing, and then what is the intended purpose? So inform about product features and benefits. That's a pretty good purpose. So I'm going to hit next, and then from there, you always want to consider the additional information that is available. And so here it has it does research, and it will say industry served, banking and finance. It's all this stuff that we just saw in ChatGPT, was pretty cool. They're completely separate systems, so this has nothing to do with the ChatGPT I just showed you. This is a different system, obviously. But here's some additional data. You could go in and include a quote from one of your clients or whatever it is. And now you'll see, okay, let's add an image. And then there's no ATMs, but I'm just gonna, obviously you'd want to add in your client's image, but let's just do that for the touchscreen. And so now it's going to be generating, and the goal of being able to sell effectively in this day and era, in this day and age, is going to be your ability to send valuable content to the prospect. So let's say you're on a phone call and they say, well, can you give me more information? The old way of doing it was probably go in, create a PDF. You would have that PDF then sent to someone to design that PDF. And as that PDF was created, there'd be like a 5-day window, and the prospect has now forgotten about you. And it's just a very convoluted process. And the way that, let's say you just today decided that you were going to go after the ATM market for touchscreens, you can now all of a sudden create your own. You're now in the business. So this is it's generated all of this information, but I'm just going to skip this, and we're going to see what has popped up. So we go over here, and we go, and all of a sudden you now have a page that you can send to your prospect about, okay, I'm now in the touchscreen business for ATMs. So it's pretty exciting, the potential of generative AI, because you could have woken up this morning and been like, I don't know which additional niches or sectors I can get my touchscreens into, but between some strategizing, whatever, you're now in a completely different niche, and it's pretty fascinating. So like, if you would obviously add in some of your customers' information around their technology, but you all of a sudden have something that can be shared to them. And that's the most important part, is being able to share additional content that improves their likelihood of doing business with you, and it increases your expertise in their eye. So that's a brief overview of our software, sitecast.com. And again, my email is brad@sitecast.com. So if you want a demo or anything like that, just shoot me an email. But with that said, I am done sharing, and now I'm hoping to do some Q&A and a conversation. So does anyone want to shoot me a question?
We had a question in the chat. If you click on it, there's originally ChatGPT was based on a database from 2021. It appears that the latest database is available to premium users. Is there a target date for this to be available to all users? Do they plan to update the database on a regular basis or schedule? Let's go over some of the stuff that you went over with me, because I was saying, in the beginning, I was like, oh, is this something I have to pay for? How much does this cost? This is going to cost me an arm and a leg. So Brad can go over costs and everything, but for everybody else that's on the call, I use a couple things in my rep firm. One of them is Industry Select. It's a service that I pay for, and they have a bunch of information about companies. You can type in a SIT code and look for specific companies in specific areas, and it gives you a printout like this, and it gives you all the company information, right? You can do that same thing with ChatGPT. It costs a fraction of the cost. This service here costs me about $2,000 a year, which is not even close to what ChatGPT is going to cost you, but I'll let Brad go over that.
Yeah, so I'm not a salesperson for ChatGPT per se. I just really love the technology. I'm the founder of sitecast.com, and so there's a few different things to consider. Is ChatGPT is just one of many that are out there. There's Gemini, like I've mentioned before, Claude. Each one is going to have a different UI. There's another one that's really cool that's coming up called Perplexity. That's another really sweet one. but they all essentially do the same thing. And at the end of the day, the thing is the pro plan, I think for ChatGPT is like $20. I have the team where you need two users. I think it's like $60 a month for 2 users, but it really helps. But the long story short is, to answer the question of, there's 20, I think early on it was like April 2021 or something, it was trained up to. The reason for that was Microsoft built the 5th most powerful computer on the planet to train GPT-4. And it's pretty fascinating because as it was training, obviously it's putting in all this data, but there's a cutoff, because once it puts in this data, that's the data that's been inputted. The new cutoff is sometime in 2023. However, if you remember earlier on, I had said use the web to research something. So when you either use the web on ChatGPT, or there's new systems like Perplexity and the Google Gemini, and there's even I'm super big into web sales in terms of conversion rate optimization. There's and search engine optimization. There's a new thing that Google's putting out called the SGE, which is the Search Generative Experience. And all of this stuff is going to be real time. So it uses the model as like a foundation, but it also is then going to search the web to find up to the minute stuff. So those cutoff dates really aren't really relevant anymore. They are if it didn't search the web and some news event happened yesterday and it didn't search the web. It's not going to know about that news event. So you got to just be aware of if it is real time or if it's not. But that's a really good question. And it looks like Rob has his hand raised.
Yeah, was going to ask, I've heard you talk about GPTs. Do you utilize any of the plugins? Do you have a preference of a plugin versus GPTs? Because I tend to use more plugins than just like my traditional conversations with ChatGPT. I've never really dug in to GPTs per se. Like I use Scraper have you ever heard of Scraper, the plugin?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, if you had an opinion on plugins versus GPTs, and the best way to utilize those for what we do.
Okay. To give a background, could you mute your mic? I'm getting a little feedback there. So to give a little background on what he's talking about for folks that haven't used ChatGPT, is that when ChatGPT first came out, it was purely text. You'd put an input, a prompt, and you'd get an output. Very, very basic, super simple. It was revolutionary. Obviously, last November, whenever 2 Novembers ago, no one even really knew about generative AI, and now that changed everything. Where they took it from there was they created plugins, and plugins was a way for different companies and data sets and whatever to interact in ChatGPT. However, the one thing that you're going to find out is that they're moving away from plugins because it was limited functionality, and they're putting all of their eggs in the GPT basket. And a GPT is essentially a fine-tuned agent. So when you use ChatGPT, the thing that it knows about is, I'm a helpful assistant. That's all that it thinks about. And then it's up to you to say, you are an expert in touchscreens, or you are an expert in copywriting, or whatever you want it to be. What a GPT is it fast tracks that. And so that's the one that I had, that ERA sales amplifier. I created a GPT specifically for folks in your industry in a way where it's highly focused on what it is it needs to do. So there's going to be more and more GPTs. It's going to be very similar to like the App Store that Apple didn't really invent the App Store, but they definitely made it famous. And so the GPT is going to be just like the App Store, where you can go and get all of these different GPTs, bring them into conversations. It's really, in my mind, the segue to artificial general intelligence, AGI, because the more that there's all of these very specific GPTs, and they could be as specific as go to YouTube and get a title of a YouTube video and make that video better, or the title better. It could be super specific, or it could be super broad of it's designed to help you negotiate better. It could be any range in between that spectrum. Super specific, but the more GPTs that you have at your disposal and the more that you can use them, it's just going to be a better output. So like I had mentioned, you just email me, brad@sitecast.com, and you can create GPTs and invite people through the link. It's pretty cool how that all works. So that's
Brad,
that.
you need a premium account to access those. And once you have a premium account, I think you said it was like $20 a month. Right now, all GPTs that are on the system are free. Maybe eventually in the future, they're going to start charging for them like you charge for apps now. But as of now, once you pay that $20, you get your membership, you get in, you can then browse all types of GPTs. So what's the difference between like a GPT like you made for our conversation today and a plugin? Is a plugin just a regular, is that just a GPT and they use it as a plugin, or is that different?
The plugin is like the precursor of GPTs, and plugins are, in my opinion, are going to just be like a legacy thing that there's not going to be really new plugins being created. The GPT is where the future is at, and right now the GPTs are all free, like you mentioned, but I would guarantee that they want to monetize it in some form or fashion in the very near future, where there's going to be companies that have very specific data sets. So let's say it is, I don't know, I can't think, there's like some company that has very specific data, and they don't want to just give that away for free. They want to have access, sell access to that data set. And data is really the new oil, if you think about it. Like anybody that has specific data, they're just going to make a killing from it. And so like, let's say Reddit has a ton of user data of conversations, of questions and answers, all of that stuff. Reddit, I would guarantee that there's some engineer at Reddit currently making a GPT, and they'll release it once that they can sell that GPT, and then you could interact with the Reddit GPT or something like that. So GPTs, you need a pro account, but again, $20 a month or $30 if you have two people, it's 60. It's so cheap per day because I only use AI now. Like even when I know that I can do something, I still use AI because it uses less of my brain. And so if you divide $20 a month by 30 days, it's less than $1 a day. And it's just mind-blowing how much potential it has for the business.
So we missed what is a good question here. If you look at the chat, Sam Westfall wrote you a question there. Could you read that and answer that? It's kind of
this is really pertinent. So Sam said, what are your thoughts on people behind AIs having to bias its answer to avoid offending people? Do we have 3 more hours? Because I could talk forever about this topic.
Hold on, Brett. Yep. Above that, he had another question that's more specific to how we can use this in our industry. If you scroll up a little bit, he was talking about how he's used ChatGPT before, and he's used different prompts, but he wants to know, how do I save that and then use it again versus having to redo the prompts every time, or teach the AI specifically about my company and then use that all the time instead of having to redo it every day?
That is a great question, and I'll quickly summarize both of those questions that Sam had, and that's a good segue into our next conversation, or our next talk. That will be, I believe we settled on on March 22nd. It's a Friday. It'd probably be the same time, and I will dive super deep into all of that stuff. But basically, the short answer is, the one thing that these LLMs, the large language models, have lacked is memory. So it's been copying our brain, but it doesn't have long-term memory. However, the advancements that they're making is it's starting to have long-term memory, where it'll just start to learn through basically no settings that you need to even select, but it will start to learn some of the stuff that you talk about. And there's a button, I'm on the beta of everything, and that's pretty cool. There's a button that will show what's in its memory, and you can kind of see what's in the memory. There's also a thing that I'll talk about next time about like custom instructions, where you can teach it who you are and how you want it to respond. There's all sorts of things like that. And then there is just like with the GPTs, you can have retrieval. It's like basically a retrieve. It's RAG. It's a very complicated thing to explain, but it basically you can upload like say PDFs or CSVs or whatever, and it can retrieve information from that. There's a thing called code interpreter. There's all sorts of different technology that will that can facilitate memory. So it's coming, I guess, long story short, of it remembering things. So, and then the bias one is actually really important, because you're going to see that all in the news more and more, especially going into this election year. It's pretty fascinating, because there is an element of whoever has created the model has inherently put bias in a way where there's this thing called reinforcement learning through human feedback, RLHF. And what it is when you're using ChatGPT, you'll see an answer and there will be like a thumbs up and a thumbs down. And anytime you hit a thumbs up, you're giving it feedback of this is what I like. And if you give it thumbs down, it says, I don't like that answer. And so prior to ChatGPT coming out, they had had a ton of different humans create these reinforcement learning just scenarios, and it did tilt more to, without getting political, more left-leaning. However, what we've seen though is it is incredibly unbiased in a lot of ways, where yes, like if you ask it certain questions politically, or like about, like if there's a train going and on one track there's a certain type of people, on another track there's a kitten, like which one is it going to hit? Like there's all these scenarios that you'll see in the news that people can like create, and it's like, oh, this is biased, but that doesn't really affect your like day-to-day sales operations. The cool thing about it being essentially unbiased is we all have cognitive biases in a way where we think a certain way and we often don't think outside of that box, where when we ask it questions, it's going to force us to think outside the box. And so it's at the end of the day, in most questions that you ask it and prompts and whatever, it's relatively unbiased, because it's going to give you both sides. Or you can even ask it that, like, let's say you're preparing for a conversation with the procurement manager at that ATM manufacturer. You could ask it, what are some of the questions that this person is going to ask? And it will give you those lists of questions. But then you could maybe go on their LinkedIn and say, they are from England. So they're from England and they went to this certain college and they did this. Now add that, okay, based on this information, what would be some of the questions that they might ask? And it might give you a completely different perspective based on some of or like, let's say you see that they're a dog person versus a cat person. So like if they're a dog person, you now know that they're into this one thing, or, like you can really have it understand the prospect a lot better. So that was, let's see.
I'll let you read the next question, Brad. And I just wanted to tell everybody, everything Brad's gone over, this is probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 over 1 hour calls that Brad has taught me all of this stuff more in depth. So this is very, very hard to pack all of this into 1 hour. So we'll do a couple more as well. And I know a lot of people are dropping off the call already because we've done our hour. But keep in mind, this is a lot of stuff to pack into 1 hour, and he's going over just the barely skimming the surface of it.
So that's a really good point. If I could add one thing real quick on top of that, would be if you, for your organization, want personalized training on this, I'd be more than happy to train you and your team. We can do it very easily through Zoom. I do it all the time. And whatever your specific use case is, I could come up with examples and ways to teach your team. So again, my email is brad@sitecast.com, and I can teach you very specific stuff.
And Brad also teaches at a college. He's a professor at a college, teaches AI as well. I guess we should have thrown that in there in the beginning. He's actually a legitimate AI teacher at a college.
Yeah, and I've been building AI-based software for about a decade. So that's been a
So
crazy ride.
Brad, I would like to, so for the next one, because I think we're getting up on time. There are other things that I think as rep owners we're trying to think of, like what is the policy, what can we put out there? What are we, if this information is used, are there any repercussions or anything that could come back, or legalities or anything? And so having a plan in place for your company, stuff like that. But as we get into like the next session, I think defining based off some of the questions that we had here, and putting out an agenda that we'd really like to formulate for the March 22nd. We're going to do it at the same time. We'll put that together. And I can tell you that we definitely took away a lot of information. I've gotten a lot of texts here that this information was very useful. So I think we hit it on the head as far as how we use this stuff. And I know that I will tell much more defined jokes going forward. So
Perfect. Yeah.
And
all right.
and Lydia, we see your question there. That's actually going to be one of the key points that we're going to have on one of our future talks about legality and how, if you generate something on AI, do you own it, or can you copyright it, or is it public information? That's a large subject, and we'll get into that as one of our main points in one of the next calls.
So
Yeah.
a brief response on that. So Lydia asked if you own the content that's created. I can't speak for all these other AI systems. However, if you use sitecast.com, shameless plug, it's totally your content. So use sitecast.com and you'll have unlimited content at your disposal. So with that said, yes, just a few parting words before we go off on our day. The main thing I want you to take away from this is that cognitive offloading. I can't stress enough how important it is to not use your brain. Like, because when you use your brain for things that something else can do for you now, you're so much better in doing the things that are important that only you can do. So like that SWOT analysis, I'm on a board of an economic development corporation, and a few years ago we had this retreat. And we spent all day, like 12 people, and these are highly paid people, 12 people all day creating SWOT analysis and doing this whiteboard. And this just, if you added up the hourly rate of that room doing a SWOT analysis, it was probably thousands and thousands of dollars an hour. And I can literally now type it in 2 seconds. And so imagine what we would have been able to accomplish had we started that day with a SWOT analysis, and then, okay, how can we use our individual expertise and experience and connections, and we can just get rid of that minutia and actually get down to the things that matter. And so it's really important to think about, what are the stuff that I'm doing every day that takes my brain power that I shouldn't need to do anymore. And that's the beauty of automation as well, where just in general, being able to automate the stuff that you don't like to do, so it frees up more of your time to do the things that you do like to do. That's what it's all about. Maybe you like to create SWOT analysis. Okay, well, don't use ChatGPT for that. Like, do whatever you want to do. And that's that panacea that's being painted, where there's a lot of doomers out there with AI. And I think it's completely unfounded in a way where, yes, there is existential risk to our capitalism society. However, once we move through this revolution, it's going to just open up so many more avenues for us to have a productive life, make money, and just enjoy our day-to-day. Because imagine a year from now, you've embraced all of this stuff. You now all of a sudden, maybe you're a solopreneur where you now have an AI lawyer, you have an AI accountant, you have an AI marketer, you have an AI salesperson. You have all of these different agents out there that are working for you. Imagine the productivity and the revenue that you can get by having just an endless amount of workers that typically would have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in workforce expenses. that you now have at your disposal. So the amount of potential here is incredible. And the ones that are going to succeed in this new era are the ones that adopt this technology. The ones that don't adopt it, I don't know what they're going to do, but they're going to be in a world of pain this decade. But the ones that do adopt it are just going to crush it. And so I hope that everyone on this call, I hope I motivated you enough to adopt it. And again, if you need very specific sales tools, sitecast.com is your source. And I'm Bradley Gauthier, and I hope to see you next March 22nd.
Yep. Thanks, Brad. Thanks,
Brad.
John. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
We'll
guys.
talk soon.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.